Today we're going to begin a study of spiritual disciplines. Spiritual disciplines is like working out. If you want to develop yourself physically, you have to do certain exercises. If we want to continue to grow spiritually, we have to have spiritual exercises in our life. And today I want to talk to you about the spiritual discipline of simplicity. Simplicity is about uncluttering our life and our mind. It is true that spiritual disciplines can feel awkward to begin with, but that's very common in life. The first time we try something, it always feels more awkward than when it becomes a habit in our life. So I'm going to ask you to try these spiritual disciplines, even if they feel a little uncomfortable to you. Charles Swindoll says in his book, So You Want to Be Like Christ, that there are 5 sources of clutter in our mind. He says the first way we clutter our mind is most of us say yes to too many things. We believe that we can do more than we can actually do. We believe we can cram more into a day than we actually can cram into a day. And we end up living this rapid fire life that never really has the time to quiet down and unclutter our mind. The second thing he says is most of us don't plan to do the kind of things that actually refresh our souls. I've had a day off where I was more tired after the day off than I was before because I didn't do the kind of things that actually calmed my inner self and renewed my spirit. And we end up living a cluttered life because we're never calm enough to unwind a bit. The third thing he says is we end up living a cluttered life because we don't experience the joy of accomplishment. Proverbs 13:19 says, a desire accomplished is sweet to the soul. This is where we organize our lives to have some wins in our life, some sense that God is at work in me, good things are happening. I'm glad I'm a Christian. The fourth thing Swindoll says is we really clutter our minds when we don't live by a budget and we end up spending more than we should spend, and we have all the stress of economics on our life. We have all the pressure of having to make more money and all the pressure of the next bill. And it leads to a very cluttered and worry-filled mind. Finally, he says, and I find this one very interesting, we live with the myth that technology will simplify my life. And if you've ever had a computer problem, you know that technology does not simplify our lives. In fact, in a lot of ways, technology can be part of the clutter problem. So, the discipline of simplicity is finding ways to slow down, finding ways to have inner calm and inner quiet, and pushing back against all the clutter that I allow to build up in my mind and in my thinking. Henry David Thoreau wrote, "Our life is frittered away by detail, so simplify. A spiritual discipline of simplicity is saying, how have I cluttered my life? How have I complicated my life? Now what can I do to push back on that and start making things a little more simplified and a little less complicated. 2 Corinthians 11 says, Paul said this to the church at Corinth, I'm afraid that as the serpent deceived Eve by his craftiness, your minds will be led astray from the simplicity and purity of devotion to Christ. A more modern translation says the same thing, but in a clearer way. Now I'm afraid that exactly as the snake seduced Eve with his smooth patter, you are being lured away from the simple purity of your love for Christ. The discipline of simplicity says, how have I made my life so complicated that I don't have time for a pure and simple and open love of Jesus Christ? How have I made my life so complicated that I don't have time to spend quietly in the presence of Christ and allow what is good and beautiful in Him to recreate and restore me? All right, if I want to simplify my life, where do I start? Swindoll says we start by taking time to pray. We begin to simplify our lives when we create a systematic prayer time where day by day we quiet our inner self, and day by day we speak to God about the things that are important in our life, and we ask Him to help us to simplify our cluttered minds and our cluttered lives. And then he said, the second way we can practice simplicity is we can create time for meditation. In meditation, I quiet my mind, I quiet my inner self, and I concentrate on things that are important and valuable to me that I may not think about in my busy day. In meditation, I begin to say, what do I really value? And is my life, time, and energy going to the things I really value, or am I squandering my lifetime and energy on things that are really not the most important to me? And then Swindoll says, we unclutter our lives by beginning to look at our private life and say, what is cluttering my private life? What's cluttering my inner self? What's cluttering my thoughts? I can look at my closet and see easily that it's cluttered. I need to sometimes take a look at my soul and say, what am I cluttering my soul with, and what might I let go of? What's going on in my inner self that if I let go of some of that, I'd have a more peaceful, calm, and less complicated inner life? This requires self-awareness, and it requires honest self-evaluation. And then he says, when you've looked at your personal life or your private life, now start looking at your public life. What are you doing that clutters your public life? What are you doing that clutters your day-to-day life and keeps you busy and running all the time that you might let go of? One of the things Swindoll suggests is we have too much stuff. And if we're always taking care of our stuff, we don't really have time to do the things that might be really more important than one more thing in my life that has to be taken care of. Simplicity is a daily habit where I examine my thought life, I examine my emotions. I examine the choices I'm making. And I say to myself, how have I overcomplicated my life? And what can I do to simplify it? Simplicity is an inner discipline where I hold myself up to God and say, how am I spending my life in a way that's not consistent with what you believe is best for me? And how can I simplify my life so that I can live the best life you created me to live? I can give my best time to what really matters. I can give my best thoughts to what really matters. I encourage you to explore simplicity as a spiritual discipline in your life.